where legendary action star and martial artist Chuck Norris has died.
The 86-year-old passing away suddenly after being taken to hospital in Hawaii.
Chuck Norris is known worldwide as an unstoppable force, a martial arts legend with a seemingly invincible image and countless jokes celebrating his superhuman feats. But behind the memes and movie stardom lies a man whose final moments revealed a humility and grace few could have imagined. What did Chuck say in his last prayer that left everyone in the room speechless and forever changed how people remember him? The answer isn't what you might expect from an action hero. It speaks to forgiveness, love, and strength beyond the physical. The unexpected final prayer. When Chuck Norris faced the end of his journey, most expected him to call out for strength or healing, attributes befitting the legendary figure known for invincibility. But the prayer he spoke in those final moments was unlike anything anyone could have imagined. It wasn't a plea for himself, nor a request to extend his days. It was something far deeper, something that startled those closest to him. The quiet room where he knelt held an energy that shifted with every word he spoke, revealing a side of Chuck few had ever glimpsed. For decades, Chuck Norris had been immortalized in popular culture as unbeatable, nearly superhuman, his name synonymous with physical power and grit. Yet, as his last prayer unfolded, this mighty image gave way to profound humility and grace. The contrast was so stark that those who heard him could barely believe their ears. It was a reminder that behind the myth was a man of faith and compassion, wrestling with reflections far beyond fame or strength. What made the moment even more remarkable was the setting itself. There were no cameras, no audience, just a small circle of family and close friends gathering quietly around Chuck in his Texas ranch living room. In this intimate space, he shed the public persona and revealed the true core of his spirit. Instead of demanding miracles, his words reached out toward forgiveness, love, and peace, offering a lesson none in the room would soon forget. Despite his declining health and pain, Chuck's final prayer didn't seek relief or comfort for himself. Instead, he chose to focus on others. It was a prayer heavy with empathy, directed not at adoration or gratitude, but at understanding and grace for those who had hurt him, and hope for the generations that would follow. This unexpected direction stunned every listener, shifting how they, and soon the world, would remember the martial arts icon forever. The anticipation of what he would say had built quietly, as those in the room prepared for his last moments. And then, instead of a hardened fighter standing tall, they saw a man vulnerable but courageous, kneeling with a heart laid bare. It was a powerful contrast to the persona welded over decades of cinematic battles and internet legends. Here was something far more profound, a genuine reckoning with life, legacy, and forgiveness. Before revealing the actual words of his prayer, it's important to recognize just how rare this moment was. Chuck Norris was a private man, cautious about sharing his inner self. For decades, only one person was trusted to witness these most personal parts of him. The enormity of what was about to be shared would not only reshape their understanding of Chuck, but challenge how anyone views true strength in the face of mortality. The silence that followed his prayer was thick with emotion. It wasn't just sorrow or loss, it was awe. The pastor who stood beside him later described how those words echoed long after they left the room, entranced by the enduring power they carried. People outside that house, once familiar only with the legend of Chuck Norris, would soon come to understand the full depth of the man beneath the myth. What Chuck chose to say in his final prayer would not be released immediately, honoring his wishes with reverence and respect. The weight of those words was felt by everyone present, stirring a mixture of heartbreak and inspiration. It's a prayer that unveils something timeless, strength that transcends the physical, a courage born of the soul. But what exactly did he say? That is the story this video will now unfold. Though the world remembers Chuck Norris for his fists and feats, The true story lies in the quiet moments before the end, where a man looks inward and beyond. The pastor's unique relationship. The man entrusted with witnessing Chuck Norris's final prayer was more than just a pastor. Tom Brown had stood by Chuck's side as a friend, counselor, and spiritual guide for an astonishing 42 years. This was no brief acquaintance. It was a bond deepened by decades of shared experiences, milestones, and private moments that the outside world would never see. Tom was, in many ways, the keeper of the man behind the legend. The relationship between the two people lasted from Chuck's professional peak until their shared family experiences. Tom participated in important personal occasions, which included officiating weddings, baptizing grandchildren, and providing support during times of mourning. Tom served as Chuck's most reliable friend because he comprehended Chuck's religious beliefs and personal anxieties and saw through his complicated family situation. Tom used his deep understanding of their connection from many years together to study Chuck's true self, which extended beyond his public persona. Tom recognized the inner struggles of the man who faced his past mistakes, while experiencing both happiness and inner beliefs that he held dear. The relationship established between them created a bond that enabled them to speak their minds while showing their inner feelings, which only a few people could experience. Tom expected Chuck to ask his pastor to visit him during his last moments. Chuck found his spiritual center through his public success and theatrical performances after he sought advice from his closest companion, who understood him better than anyone else did. The location would serve as the foundation for a groundbreaking prayer, which would overturn all previous beliefs regarding what constitutes bravery and strength. Tom had long respected Chuck's wishes for privacy, holding back many stories out of loyalty and reverence. Chuck's final prayer brought him to his soul's inner truth, which made him share what others had given him to protect. He followed Chuck's demand that all information should stay secret until after his death, which he declared to be a holy moment. The pastor's role went far beyond spiritual duties. The pastor confirmed Chuck's complete life journey through his testimony of seeing Chuck fight both in boxing matches and film productions and during his everyday battles against death. The pastor learned from this relationship how Chuck's faith transformed him and the grace that supported Chuck during his final hours. The story presents a completely different view of Chuck Norris, which people who only know him as an icon will find surprising. Tom's observations show him to be a man who spent his final days thinking deeply about life while showing dignity through his public persona. The sight of Chuck kneeling in his living room to pray for others instead of himself created an everlasting impression that would stay with Tom. People demonstrate their deepest strength through spiritual courage, which serves as a more accurate measurement of their abilities than physical power. The relationship between the pastor and his parishioner formed an unspoken agreement that created the public image that would define Chuck Norris's final goodbye. The pastor's statement functions as the connection between mythical and human existence, which demonstrates the hidden aspects of Chuck's personality that stayed concealed behind his humorous image and cinematic fame for many years. The actual events that would occur in the future become clear when people understand the person who operated behind the scenes. What we're about to hear from Chuck's final prayer carries the weight of a friendship forged through time, truth, and unwavering faith, giving the words a power no script could ever capture. Preparing for the last moments. Chuck Norris spent his final days in the quiet sanctuary of his Texas ranch, a place he had called home for nearly 4 decades. The sprawling land was not just a retreat, but a sacred space where he had shared countless memories with family and forged some of his most recognizable moments. It was here, surrounded by nature and the people he cherished, that he prepared for his last act of faith. The period before Chuck's prayer showed his deteriorating health conditions, while his mental abilities stayed at full capacity. He had already stopped most pain medications, choosing to face the end lucidly. Through his clear thinking, he established emotional and spiritual connections with others who helped him during both solitary and shared moments. His actions showed he had a remaining task, which he intended to finish before he died. Chuck spent this period in silence, sitting on the back porch while he gazed across his land with both peacefulness and deep thought. The process involved two distinct stages, which began with self-reflection and finished with his actual work preparations. He filled yellow legal pad pages with handwritten notes during a period that lasted almost 2 entire days. His personal writings remained unreadable because he burned them in his fireplace to guarantee their complete destruction. Chuck's family honored the boundary because they recognized that Chuck needed to maintain his personal relationship with God through his own secret practices. The document destruction through page burning served as an official end to the document, which contained his private thoughts that he wanted to keep hidden from both public and personal observation. His spiritual journey during this time revealed his intense need for personal space, which he considered to be sacred. Chuck made one major request to his family. He ordered all of his children and grandchildren to come to the ranch. The family needed to gather before the final moments, which created an emergency situation. Family members traveled through the night, which showed their strong loyalty to the family and the importance of the upcoming event. Chuck welcomed his family members by greeting each one, and he showed affection through tender face contact while gazing into their eyes. He presented them with minor mementos that contained sealed letters that served as personal gifts of affection and goodbyes. The notes maintain strict secrecy because they contain details about an extremely private event. He dedicated his last moments to spending time with family because they held the most important place in his life. The house maintained complete quietness during the morning prayer because all windows remained covered and lights stayed off. Chuck refused to stay in his hospital bed, which had been prepared for him. He chose to kneel on the living room carpet because this position showed his lifelong belief in maintaining dignity while demonstrating his strength to overcome obstacles. This action demonstrated his strong commitment to battling death according to his personal wishes. The family members experienced intense emotions because they were about to witness something that they would never be able to understand completely. The room contained deep love and respect, even though the people present experienced both pain and uncertainty. This gathering served as a holy space where Chuck would share both a prayer and his true identity with those who already knew him and with those who would discover him. Everything transformed when Chuck positioned himself on his knees to deliver his speech. The last prayer would begin, which would extend its reach beyond the living room space to touch anyone who chose to hear it. The events that followed demonstrated Chuck Norris's true character and showed how faith and forgiveness function at the end of life. The stillness of that ranch gave way to the most powerful words Chuck would ever speak. The family's presence. The evening before Chuck Norris's final prayer was marked by an urgent call that summoned every one of his children and grandchildren to the ranch. There would be no exceptions, no delays. Chuck wanted his entire family gathered beneath one roof in those last hours. Some traveled long distances, arriving weary but determined, understanding the gravity imbued in their father's request. For Chuck, family was everything, and in his final moments, that bond took center stage. As each family member arrived, Chuck greeted them personally, holding their faces gently in his hands and looking deeply into their eyes. With each gesture, he communicated a profound love that words alone could not capture. Alongside these intimate greetings, he handed out small keepsakes, physical reminders of his presence and affection. Each was accompanied by a sealed handwritten note, a private message whose contents remain closely guarded, never shared nor speculated upon by the family. The room exhibited strong emotions through the silent communication between the two people. The moment served as their last farewell, which allowed them to express their love and comfort through their final connection. Chuck used private notes to communicate with his loved ones because he wanted to share personal messages that people outside his family should not access. The man who stood before us desired to be remembered as a father and grandfather, not as a film star or legend. The first light of the next day arrived without making any noise. The ranch house remained in dim light because the closed curtains created shadows that matched the room's sad atmosphere. Chuck chose to stay out of the hospital bed, which had been positioned beside the window, because he wanted to die with dignity and control his final moments. He needed assistance to rise from his seat and perform a kneeling prayer on the carpet, but he refused to pray while lying down. His oldest son opposed the idea of kneeling because he believed it would cause pain, but he suggested that God would hear the prayer just as well if Chuck remained in bed. Chuck maintained his position, which showed his determination to accomplish his goal. "I have stood tall my entire life for the things I believe in. The moment requires me to kneel for the final time, because it is right," he said. The words that brought silence to the room showed the humility that would characterize his last moment. The artist expressed his genuine emotions during his speech to his family, who had come to see him. He apologized for all the moments he could not attend, including birthdays, school plays, and dinners, which he missed because his work required him to be away. He recognized that neither success through fame nor his awards and wealth could substitute for the time he spent with his family members. The person began to cry, and the atmosphere became heavy with the feelings of lost opportunities. Many of his grandchildren already exhibited powerful emotions, which started to show before the prayer began, because they anticipated the upcoming events. The pastor asked the congregation to close their eyes so Chuck could start his presentation whenever he wanted. The room experienced complete silence for 17 seconds. The only sound that he made was his heavy breathing, which he used to breathe before his first tear fell, and he began to pray. The gathering showed all three emotions that Chuck Norris experienced during his last moments in life. The family became active participants in a sacred tradition during this moment, which showed their transformation from being observers. The family members found comfort through their father and grandfather, who displayed their weakness by demonstrating their human side instead of looking like distant celebrities. The room served as the space where Chuck Norris showed his true legacy, which exists beyond all public appearances. Family became the primary focus for him during his last hours because he wanted to show people his true self, who valued human connections more than recognition from others. And in this embrace of family, a quiet strength began to ripple through the room, setting the stage for a prayer that would resonate far beyond those walls. Kneeling against the odds. Despite the intense pain coursing through his body, Chuck Norris insisted on kneeling for his final prayer, a posture that carried profound symbolism. It was more than a physical act. It represented a lifetime of standing firmly for his beliefs, now humbled in his last moment. To Chuck, kneeling was not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of his enduring dignity and faith. His son tried to dissuade him, knowing the toll it would take on his father's already fragile body. But Chuck was resolute. The simple act of kneeling was a final statement of integrity, standing tall through decades of struggle and triumph, and now bowing respectfully at the end. The room held its breath as the oldest son gently helped his father down, the silence so profound that the ticking of the clock was almost tangible. Chuck's words in that moment captured the essence of his spirit. "I have stood tall my entire life for the things I believe in. It is only right that I kneel for the last time." There was a raw vulnerability in that declaration, one that left the room speechless. Those words echoed the complexity of a man who balanced strength with humility, defying the stereotype of unyielding toughness. The act of kneeling, which Chuck performed, demonstrated his belief that prayer functions as a genuine religious practice through which people demonstrate their devotion to God. The moment's spiritual importance took precedence over his experience of physical distress. He selected this position to show respect for the holy nature of the prayer while his family members stayed present because he wanted to achieve both his faith and his human limits. The room created an environment that combined deep respect with intense sadness as he knelt. The audience members discovered his ability to endure suffering, but also experienced deep respect for his elegant way of managing his discomfort. The sight of a man whom people regarded as completely strong showed that true bravery exists through authentic self-disclosure instead of maintaining complete strength. The act created a situation that completely contradicted all of Chuck Norris's expectations. He had the option to use his last period of life to maintain his dignity or show himself as an invincible person. He selected a path of humility. The act of kneeling showed his entire life experience, which taught him manhood through defending others and showing compassion while displaying personal weaknesses. Chuck reached his ultimate lesson about strength when he faced his final moment of life surrounded by his family members in their peaceful home. He demonstrated his strength through the basic and challenging act of kneeling down while raising others up through his prayers. The moment's power remained present because it changed the definition of true fearlessness. His selection established a holy area where the prayer could take place, because the prayer would astonish listeners and motivate countless others who would explore this man's most profound inner self. Chuck's prayer was a revelation not only of his faith, but of the extraordinary courage he showed in that last act of humility. The words that stunned everyone. In his final moments, Chuck Norris offered a prayer that no one in the room expected. Rather than asking for healing or relief, he began by praying for his enemies, for those who had criticized him, spoken against him, or caused him pain. He asked that they be given peace and mercy, the same grace he believed he had received. The room fell into complete silence. It was a powerful act of forgiveness that revealed a depth of character far beyond the image the world knew. He then turned his focus to future generations. Chuck prayed for children he would never meet, hoping they would understand true strength, not as dominance or silence, but as compassion and courage. He spoke about what it means to be a real man, not someone who never shows emotion, but someone who stands up for others and leads with heart. His words challenged the idea that vulnerability is weakness, offering instead a vision of strength rooted in empathy. He also spoke about faith, urging young people not to see it as something fragile or outdated, but as a source of direction and meaning. These reflections carried the weight of a life shaped by both success and struggle, revealing a man who had spent years thinking deeply about purpose, belief, and responsibility. The family members of Chuck became his main focus when his breathing intensified. He asked God to protect his wife, whom he regarded as the most powerful woman he had ever met, despite her unnoticeable strength. He prayed for his children and grandchildren who would attempt to show strength while they actually mourned their loss. His words showed deep concern for their well-being because he wanted to protect both their physical safety and their emotional health. He requested that his family keep his memory alive through their personal relationship with him instead of seeing him as a public figure. He wanted them to feel his presence even after he was gone, to know they were never alone. The connection between people holds greater value than public acknowledgement, according to this basic yet strong message. His final words of the prayer were soft. Thank you. Amen. The stillness that followed lasted minutes, broken only by quiet tears. The experienced hospice nurse, who worked for years, said she had never seen anything as strong as that moment. Chuck opened his eyes and smiled at people nearby while he ordered them to stop feeling sad. He claimed that he had experienced everything a person should during their lifetime. Then he left his pastor a final message that would continue his legacy, because he officially stated that he had used his life in a productive manner. The profound nature of Chuck's prayer left every witness changed. Yet, there was one part of that day the pastor could not fully explain, a mystery that settled deep in his soul. The aftermath and reflection. In the days after Chuck Norris passed, Pastor Tom Brown carried more than a memory. He carried the weight of a final prayer. Honoring Chuck's request, he kept it private for a full week, not even sharing it with his wife. The silence was heavy. The words stayed with him, replaying constantly as he tried to understand their depth. He experienced trouble falling asleep. He stayed awake through multiple nights, while he thought about his past experience. The pastor received his first powerful experience after he had prayed and ministered for multiple decades. The situation involved more than faith expression because the person showed exceptional courage and forgiveness and achieved understanding at a critical moment of life. Tom wrote everything from his memory onto a napkin 2 minutes after the prayer finished. The situation lacked any recorded material or written documentation because the people involved showed high levels of responsibility and urgent needs. The napkin remained inside his Bible for several weeks because he considered it his most important spiritual experience. The situation affected multiple people beyond him. A hospice nurse present at the time later described it as the most powerful final moment she had ever witnessed. The emotional overload made her leave the room without speaking. The situation became more intense because it showed death to him who had experienced death before. Tom paid most attention to the final minutes he spent observing. As Chuck prayed, the visible pain in his face faded. His expression changed to a more gentle state, and his voice became stronger, while he temporarily transformed into a younger version of himself. The situation lacked any clear explanation. He saw something which became permanent in his memory. The situation created a feeling of disturbance inside him. The situation stayed with him because it made him understand life. The situation in the piece showed the strength that exists beyond physical boundaries, which people rarely observe. For years, Chuck Norris had been seen as larger than life, a symbol of strength and toughness. The people who attended his last hour witnessed a different aspect of him. His true strength showed itself through his ability to show grace, to offer forgiveness, and to demonstrate love toward other people. The testimony of Tom creates a new viewpoint that shows his existence as a normal human being who lived beyond the legend. The real strength of a person shows itself through their capacity to forgive and to love others while facing death with calmness. According to the statement, the power of this prayer extends far beyond that living room, inviting each of us to reflect deeply on our own lives and choices. The true strength of Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris's final prayer reframed his legacy.
Our correspondent Lauren Tomasi looks back at his extraordinary life.
Not as an untouchable action hero, but as a man defined by humility, grace, and courage. For decades, he was known for strength, toughness, and near-mythical resilience. Yet, in his final moments, the strength he revealed had nothing to do with physical power. It was found in forgiveness, love, and the willingness to face vulnerability without fear. The prayer demonstrated a stronger form of power that emerged from human understanding. He decided to help other people, which included his enemies, instead of keeping his dignity and requesting additional time. He thought of his children and all future generations whom he would never see. The quiet selflessness of his character through the years, he maintained his powerful facade, shows that genuine strength comes from showing compassion, not from controlling people. His bravery extended beyond physical limits because it included emotional and spiritual dimensions. The ability to kneel in pain and cry in front of loved ones while seeking peace for others demands extraordinary strength. The discovery showed a man who practiced self-discipline, yet he refused to run away from his own emotional struggles. The combination of toughness and tenderness brings forth a complete understanding of actual strength. He spent his last moments analyzing family connections. He recognized all the sacrifices his family members made, which included missing out on special occasions, dining experiences, and regular family activities. The relationship experienced regret, but they also shared powerful affection. He desired to be remembered as a devoted father and grandfather, instead of being called a legendary figure. The shift in his emphasis from fame toward interpersonal relationships established his enduring impact. What makes this moment even more powerful is how it quietly redefines what people admire. Strength is often measured by control, dominance, or how much someone can endure alone. But what Chuck revealed was something deeper, a strength that connects rather than isolates, that heals, instead of hardens. Chuck Norris developed his actual strength through the path he decided to travel, instead of what people perceived. His final message instructs us to demonstrate our intentions while we should forgive people and appreciate essential things. If Chuck Norris's final prayer taught us anything, it's that true strength is measured not by fists or fame, but by love, forgiveness, and humility. His last words inspire us to reflect on our own lives and how we can live with courage and grace. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us what it means to be human. Thank you for watching.